into clothing, and those things are exported. The way we import clothing materials from China and come and sew and wear here. We were as well using cotton from our farms to produce things like these things you wear and we export. That is what we were turning the hides and skin into shoes, into sandals, into handbags productively, even before the colonial masters and capitalist system of production come, and we were exporting it. People were working in the steel factories, people were working in Nigerian airways, people were working in Nigerian shipping companies. In fact, it got to a point that the Nigerian shipping company was even fabricating its own beginning to think of fabricating its own fabricating the parts. Nigerian airways was the best across the world, like what you have as Ethiopian airways. If all those things are functional, who will be driving keke?
But do you realize that in senior climes like in India, that have actually, some people say the keke car originated from there, and they have some of all the things you've mentioned.
The Indians produce the keke themselves. They fabricate the parts themselves, and they utilize it themselves. We always refer to India, this, that, when we are talking. Are we close to India? Is it only driving keke from India that we will learn? Can't we learn to build the Indian Tata, where they fabricate cars, long buses, and export across the world? Can't we make our own cars? Why is it that we went to India and the only thing we learned or we picked up from India is how to ride keke? Not even manufacture keke, not even produce the parts of keke, but just to ride keke. How come that is what the only thing we came out from India from? I don't know other things. The Indian pharmaceutical companies that are producing the drugs we are taking in our hospitals, in our pharmacies. Why didn't we come back with that one and the technology to establish our own pharmaceutical companies, produce drugs and send to India?
The keke driver actually makes close to 4,000, over 4,000 each day.
If he makes close to 4,000 each day, how much does he spend on fuel? How much does he spend on spare parts on extremely bad roads? After he has made 10,000 a day, how much does he use to buy fuel? Fire fuel, because your government could not get your refineries to work. Refinery that would have given the youth a better job. Are you not saying that if an average Nigerian youth to choose to be between working in Port Harcourt refinery, possibly as working in Port Harcourt refinery, learning how to fabricate tools that will use to repair the refinery machines. He's working on the machines and he's already learning how to fabricate tools and to locally produce it to use and fix the machines, where he earns money in dollars, and then riding keke on the street. Which one do you think he will prefer? And which one makes a better career for him? A young man who started riding keke after secondary school, for instance, he left secondary school at 15 and started riding keke. So, assuming without considering that keke is a career, so he will ride keke till he becomes 70. Retirement age in Nigeria is 60, sometimes 65, so some people 70. So he will ride keke till he's 70. So for 55 years, he will be riding keke as a career.
So you feel
then do you choose between working in the Ministry of Internal Affairs or External Affairs, or working in the Ministry of Justice, or working in Shell for 35 years and retiring, and riding keke for 35 years and retiring? Which one will you prefer as Nnamdi? If you are given the option, given the fact that Nnamdi tells me that they make 4,000 naira a day.
Do you feel that Olusegun Obasanjo has come to mock the youths?
I say that not only Obasanjo, they mock the youth at all times. What was Obasanjo's policy for the 8 years he was in power? He lost the youth. What was his policy for the youths? What did Obasanjo do for the youth? How did he encourage the youths with soft loans to go into? Look, let me tell you. Do you know that if we encourage our youths with proper supervision and technology, and say, look, go into agriculture, and into agriculture, go into poultry, you go into palm production, you go into cassava production, you go into yam production. Before, they used to tell us that cash crops are those crops you don't consume, but you don't sell to get foreign exchange, but you consume. But today, practically every crop is a cash crop, because you can convert plantain into different kinds of products and export it. You make a foreign exchange. Even yam, you convert yam into different kinds of products and you export it, you make foreign exchange. Why is it that Obasanjo in the 8 years did not trigger off a revolution in agricultural production, which even him is associated with famine, before he came to power, and for the years he's in power currently? Why didn't he trigger it so that by now, look, let me tell you, there was a time in this country, there was a time in this country that certain parts of chicken or certain fishes are not are not consumed by Nigerians because there was enough. You want to go and buy an old layer, you buy it for 3,005. By now, we should have gotten to a point that you can buy an old layer for 150 naira or 50 or 100 naira because there is mass production. Surpluses will be exported while we have sufficient internally to crash the price. Was that done in 80s? Now, a career as a farmer who is into poultry production or who is into goats or who is into cow and milk, imagine that in the morning the local government authorities will go around the whole of Obiako collecting cow milk from various farms, collecting cow milk from, for instance, 10,000 farms or from 10,000 families within Obiako, and such milks are gathered and sent to the federal ministry of, and they export it, and money comes out. Do you know what it means? Do you compare that? Do you know that number one, there will be sufficient milk locally to boost the local economy, to assist our health, to feed well? Then we have enough milk to export. That is from milking cows. The other people come from different subsectors of the agricultural industry. And then from that production, we now go into processing. Because at a point, we'll get enough money that we'll begin to process our produce. From processing, we now go into mass production and industrialization. Why was all that not done for the 8 years? And then what you use in empowering a young man. Okay, how many of the men who use keke to empower the youth are their children driving keke? If keke was such a wonderful enterprise, when they established big companies, they put their children as directors. Even in government-owned companies, they feel that they could not destroy or sell to death. They put their children as directors and managers in those places. So how many of their children are driving keke along the street of Abuja, Lagos, Abeokuta, Port Harcourt, or whatever? Their children are rather whiling away in Europe and North America, where they're experimenting their hand in irresponsibility, drugs, and all manner of stupidity, at the cost with our stolen funds or looted resources. They are there living like the princes of Europe or North America. Why the bulk of Nigerian youths are here driving keke and bedridden in poverty, and you are not trying to celebrate that keke is now an empowerment for a Nigerian youth. You are telling him to die driving keke. On which road does he drive keke? The keke drivers, when you see them along the road, do you wish that your son ends up driving keke? Why will you send your own son to study medicine, study law, study accountancy and engineering, and think of him working in the best companies, and then end up giving another person's child keke? If keke is such a wonderful enterprise, then let us all go and drive keke. Beautiful.
Well, he's actually encouraged the youths to actually imbibe good virtues and saying that the country belongs to them and they should also not allow those who were going to mismanage the country to do that. So
if he's encouraging the youth to imbibe good virtues, that's a wonderful enterprise. But youths cannot have good virtues until there is a prevailing material condition that will assist that. A young man who gets up in the morning, who does not have a meal and does not, your next one is not assured. The chicken in the neighborhood is under a threat. It doesn't matter who owns the chicken. Have you seen people harvesting other people's plantain and they are fighting in the neighborhood? They are hungry. They want to eat something. How do you now call a thief a man who is hungry and the society has failed him? He's looking for what to eat. So there will be insecurity in this climb. As much as possible, let's not pretend. No amount of praying on Sundays or going to night vigil will save us. Definitely this place is going to, until we get young men a career and what they will be doing. Look, a person must be assured that he must have security. In Europe and North America, people do 3-4 jobs. And there is a particular amount of dollars or euro allocated per hour for a job. And therefore, when you do these jobs, you pay taxes on this job. Government make money from your labor. Then you bring your initiative to be on this job. You are seen to be an initiative person. You are seen to be a person who is articulate, who can make improvement. You are promoted. You know, your services are hired further and further and further. So, and you make more money. Now, because you make money, you are a stakeholder in the society. Because you wouldn't want to come back to your house, let there be no light, let there be no water. You wouldn't want that, so you pay your taxes. And because this society feeds you and protects you, you don't want to be a challenge to the society. So for the minority of the minority who would like to choose the light of deviance, the majority will collectively be their enemy. But here, the young man is vulnerable. So when they are saying I'm by virtues, the Nigerians have very wonderful virtues, very beautiful virtues. Meet them on their best times and on a good time. Look, In every part of the country, we have the best of men, the best of human beings are here. But the material condition created by our leaders makes it impossible.
Is it wrong to really start small, if you say?
Yes, if there is opportunity to. In fact, everything in life that is a success is started small.
So that's
for
why
you to make success,
you must to start small.
And the small is. How do you start small with keke, for instance? How do you get the keke? An average keke goes for 700 to 800,000. A young man who has graduated from the university, for instance, wants to get one keke to be driving. Where does he get the loan? Who gives him the loan? Which government credit facility gives him a secured loan? Refundable or non-refundable? Who? Tell me who.
The lacuna very much.
That's what I'm saying. Who gives him the. I have graduated from the university. I studied philosophy, English, political science, or sociology. And I want to start small by driving keke. But the particular keke goes for 800,000. How? But what if we had a factory in Nigeria whereby the guy who read engineering of any type, or even, look, if we had a keke factories being manufactured in Nigeria, a man who read philosophy can go to be assembling keke, packing it into cartons for it to be exported. Good job. Initiative, industry. Remember, somebody will be producing the cartons. That industry producing the cartons will employ people. Remember, somebody will transport the cartons from the factory of production to the factory where the keke is being made. That person, so the driver, somebody will offload it. All of them are engaged in productive venture. Then somebody will pack the keke into the carton for it to be exported, to take it to the seaport. Somebody has to be involved. To load it in the ship, somebody has to be. Imagine if that keke is loaded into a Nigerian ship going to India, going to China, going to other parts of the world. Don't you see that the Nigerian embassy there will be more busy to accommodate and protect the interests of Nigerians and Nigerian ship in the sea within the territory of their country? Don't you see there is a chain of production? But when you do not do this and you tell a Nigerian youth who has left the university after 4 solid years, of which ASU strike has given him an extra 1 or 2 years, of which he went to youth service and merely escaped from bombing in the northern region of the country or kidnapping in the south, he eventually sneaks back to the father's house. The flowing money will tell him to go and get the keke, and keke is 800,000. From where will a man who is as well driving keke to train his child in the university? Is it that one is what is driving to train him in the university will give back to the son and go home to retire to do what? How does the son get it? So we have to be very realistic. People shouldn't come out of their comfort zone to mock men. These are people like Olusegun Obasanjo, people whose bills were paid. Then Nigeria paid all their bills. From the time they went to primary school, they enjoyed free education. Western Nigeria. They went to secondary school and it was subsidized by the church. They entered the army and the government paid their bills until the time they left the army. And upon leaving the army, they were entitled to pension and gratuity and entitled to some other privileges. Eventually, the person now does a farm, an industrialized farm, which possibly he did with the resource of the country. Today, the same person becomes a president, get all the allowances from Nigeria, retire with all these allowances from Nigeria, trains his children with scholarships of Nigeria, lives at the comfort and the expense of Nigeria at his old age, and then he jumps out of his house in a comfortable morning, enters a keke, and begins to do boom, boom, boom along the street and tell you to imitate him. Imitate what? Imitate driving a keke?
Well,
as a productive venture.
Matters and state, there's a state of the nation, we have it today, has been analyzed and spewed out by Barrister Arochukwu, a human rights activist here today in the city of Port Harcourt. We're still also at the ATN studios where we're having, and this is open air today on a Sunday morning. Some situations could be very pathetic here in Nigeria, but we'll still move on. We'll give you and keep you up to speed with the matters really going on and which can enable you make informed decision on what to do in the nearest future as we have it. So we're discussing right now, moving over to the last matter we have on ground, which is towards 2023. Political leaders who make false promises are fraudsters, says Falana, ahead of the 2023 general elections. Legal luminary and human rights activist Femi Falana San has said political leaders whose parties make false electoral promises are fraudsters that deserve to be prosecuted in accordance with Section 419 of the Criminal Code. Now, he also challenged media practitioners to stop the ruling class from turning Nigeria's democracy to a plutocracy, government of the wealthy. The media should campaign against political parties which violate their own constitutions. People who violate the party constitutions they freely give to themselves will not hesitate to rape the country's constitution and the Electoral Act. He added that apart from exposing criminally minded politicians, the media should also mount pressure on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to prosecute them in line with Section 145 of the Electoral Act. Well, there's a new one now, and I don't know if this has been in existence since, where people who, politicians who give false promises during campaign periods, and whenever they enter into power, the reverse is the case. They ended up not saying what they mean, or not doing what they said they were going to do. This new one being, is this a new one being said by Femi Falana?
As I told you before, that the Electoral Act revolutionized our election, the current Electoral Act, and criminalized a lot of things. Well, I wouldn't know whether there is an express provision in that act. I'll check it up to say that when people make promises, because it's actually difficult to prosecute people based on their promises. Because if a man is contesting an election and made promises based on certain permutations of resources available, and upon getting there, those resources are not available, definitely the person will not be able to fulfill what he has said, and that will be the leeway out. But I think what Falana is saying is that practically all the actors in the political scene now are people already known to Nigerians. There are people who have been in political leadership in this country. And these are people who have been in the public space for years. They are not strange, they are not new to us. In fact, at any political epoch or time in Nigerian history, there are no new things or new politicians. It has always been the old ones. And each of the politicians you see today has an ideological leaning or history with the old order. You can trace them, the ideological leaning or the order or their political families right from the First Republic. Down from the 50s, you can trace where each of them emanated from, the history, the lineage, the political lineage of each of the actors. And therefore, given this, the Nigerian people, particularly the youths, should be able to make informed choice and opinions. You see, a man who is making a promise to us today is the same man who has been in power before. And the same person have had opportunity to do what he's telling us today while he was in power. Then the question is, if a man has been a state governor, for instance, or been a minister, or been a senator, or been a senate president, or whatever, and you are today contesting an election, and you are making promises to us, it will be fool. How did the person implement those things he's saying while he was in power?
Another thing again, we should look. Why would the electorate want to really hold that kind of person by his words, knowing that you said he has held
exactly. We have no reason to hold such a person by his words. The person is a joker, is not serious, and therefore we should be able to make informed choices as a people.
Based on what Falana has actually raised up now, yes. So should that person be regarded as a fraudster?
Definitely, he is a fraudster because he's inconsistent. A fraudster is a man who is not consistent. He's a fraudster because he said one thing, he did another, even when there are objective conditions for him to fulfill what he said. And now the person is trying to say the same thing he said before, which he did not live up to. How can some people...
You said here that there are some indices which must have surrounded his campaign promises.
Yes.
Which he may not be able to fulfill when he gets into power.
I agree. I said, yes, that is it. But I said, he said this thing before. There were objective conditions for him to fulfill it then. He did not do it. He is saying the same thing again. That by me saying it now, he ought not to be taken serious. So let us even better when he goes into power now, there will be objective conditions for him to fulfill it or not. That's what people should be citizens. That are fraudsters. In fact, let me tell you, the worst form of crime